Hello, people. Welcome to another episode of the Suited Kings podcast. Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Happy New
Ma-
Year.
Yeah. Max and I are here on the morning of January 1st, recording this episode for you guys.
It's like 6 a.m. New
Yeah,
Year's morning.
6 a.m. I think 5 actually. I'm
Oh, it's
not looking
5,
at the
yeah.
time,
Woke
but
up a little early, yep.
we cannot wait to get another episode out for you guys.
That's a joke, by the way, guys. It's truly
It's
like 11.
11.
It's like 11, yeah.
um,
How was your New Year's, Wes?
it was fun. Um, my girlfriend and I went out to Union Rooftop in downtown or North Loop, wherever,
Nice.
with another friend of mine. It was good. Didn't go too crazy because I knew we had this today.
Oh, look at you, dedication.
Yeah, but yeah, it was fun. And but you know what I'm more excited for?
What's that? Slapping people around in the New Year?
Slapping people around in the new year, talking about solving hands, getting better at poker.
Getting better at poker is a good way to start the New Year, for sure. And I know
Yeah.
a lot of our listeners are thinking the same thing, so.
What about you? Did you do anything fun?
I did.
Probably
So
not. You're kind of old, but
this old boy knows how to have fun anyway. So I started off the morning with a nice little troll hog and snowboard session with a couple of
ooh,
buddies. It was really
ooh.
nice up until it wasn't. So typically I like to get a little fireball in me before because when I go to troll hogging with these guys, it's pure park. Like we're just hitting rails and jumps the entire time. So
Hmm.
um, I like to get a little fireball in me, get a little sauced up, and throw some fun tricks. Uh, it started off really hot. Was having a lot of, I mean, hot as in good. Like had a lot of fun. We're landing tricks. The snow was pretty icy yesterday, so it kind of was. It was a little scary to try and to try hard tricks because you can fall on this stuff and you get wrecked. But anyways, um, after two fireball shooters, two beers, and then another shot, things got a little sloppy to say the least, and I probably fell like a good 10 times, including one right on my dome. So,
Oh man.
and then to end the day, I went home and I was kind of drunk at that point, and I rested for a little bit before my wife and I went to grab dinner and went to a comedy show. So I was feeling kind of like shit all night, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, had a migraine,
Your
but
yeah, is your head all right?
it's yeah. Fine. Like I woke up with one this morning, and we're back on track here now. I cut some Advil cut through it this morning, so I'm feeling good again. But
Good.
anyways, Wes, 2025, Happy New Year's. Happy to be here and looking forward to a fun year of getting better at poker and hopefully making a pile of cash.
That's the plan, isn't it?
Yes. Nice glasses,
Um,
by the way, for anyone
yeah,
who's
you've
watching the
got some
video
good ones
version.
too. I figured we should start off the new year with a little pizzazz here.
Yeah, pizzazz is
Um,
nice. By the
for
way,
for
if you're listening to the audio version of this, this would be a good one to probably check out the YouTube version of. As today we're going to do a little bit of learning. Wes is going to be showing us how he uses the solver and explain more on that, Wes.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually take a couple hands that we recently reviewed and put them through GTO Wizard. And the point of it is just to give everyone a little bit of insight as to how to use the tool, but then also how I actually, use it to learn and think about hands with it and how you can look at what it might say and instead of just automatically repeating what it says, you can choose, if you can see if something is kind of close and if you should, lean into an exploitative play, and a little bit more of just how to think about that side of it.
Okay.
So,
Nice. And for those who are just listening to the audio version and aren't able to watch the video version, Wes and I are going to make it as, smooth as possible or as easy as possible for you to just enjoy and actually learn by following along on the audio version as well. So whatever platform you're watching slash listening to this through, should be a great episode. And I know I'm definitely going to try and learn and benefit from it as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. Before that, I do want to say we are going to get back into the meetup games on
yep.
Clubs Poker.
Yep.
I believe we will be doing one next Tuesday.
Next
Um,
Tuesday, yes. I'm going to
and
actually pull up that right now. Next Tuesday is going to be the 7th of January.
yep, that'll be at 7:30 Central Time, 7:30 p.m. We'll have a tournament. We'll have a ring game,
Yep.
And
Our current who is our current home game champion? They've been holding the title for a few weeks since we've been kind of gone for the holiday festivities. Shoot, I'd have to go look now. I can't
yeah,
even
well,
remember.
I know that Randy Jacks
Yeah,
got
Rand.
one.
That's who it is. That's who it is.
That's
But
who it is. Yeah.
he's still holding that Discord
Uh,
tag, so we gotta
that's
dethrone him.
disgusting. That's disgusting for me because I had him. I had a 4-1 chip lead on him. Heads up, and he still got me.
Gosh, one day, I mean, 2025 year is the year that Wes
It's the new
starts
year. I'm gonna
closing.
win like 8 trophies this
It's
year.
when you start closing.
Yeah.
I also want to give a shout out to our boy Jason Hoffman,
Yeah.
a local player and a friend of ours and a listener as well, I believe.
He better be.
Yeah, he better be. It sounds like he's in our Discord at least. But anyways,
Yeah.
it looks like he smashed like a 60K score on
Yeah.
ACR this week and on Sunday, and like what was it, a 99 buy-in or something?
109. The
109.
Sunday
That's right.
moneymaker. It's like a 109 guarantees either like 250 or 300K, and he just won it. And that's a
That's hard to do on that. That's a big
not only
field.
is it a massive field, but it's not the easiest. I mean, it's a tough tournament.
Yeah, it's gonna have all the best players in it. So, congrats to you, Jason. Who else
That's
do we
really
got?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some other people that hit some scores this week, and I'm trying to remember. Someone else posted a score.
Um, Taylor Moss.
Yeah, Taylor Moss. That's right.
He got second place in the global poker mystery bounty, multi-day mystery bounty, whatever they call
So it's
that.
like it was called like Unfold the Present, something like that, where you have to qualify into day 2 and then straight into the mystery bounties. And I think it had like 733 entries, right around there. And Taylor ended
was
up.
that the amount that made day 2, right?
That's the amount that made day 2. I would
Yeah.
say probably somewhere nearing 4K in total entries.
Wow.
And Taylor got second. It was 99 buy, and Taylor got second. I ended up getting 19th, so that was nice. Yeah, so congrats to both of those guys. That's very exciting.
And you didn't just get 19th. The bigger highlight here is you pulled a 10K bounty.
I did, and it was pretty sweet. I was telling you about the hand, but
Yeah. It involved overlimping 10-4 offsuit, but it was probably a pretty okay. If you're ever going to do it, it's the time to do it. Let's
yeah, I mean, one of the bounties had 1.2 big, so that's why we overlimped the 10-4. And thankfully no one raised, and we got to realize our equity, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
cool.
pulled that. That was pretty sick. So that was a good way to end the year, and hopefully, you know what? I smell 7 figures in 2025.
Ooh.
Whether that's the monster stack, the WSOP, the main, whatever it is, like 7 figures. 2025.
Or just like win every MSPT you play.
Every single one. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Even just one,
works.
actually. I'd be okay with just winning one.
I would take
one
one
more, that is.
Yeah. One.
You would take one. I'd take one more. Just playing. Yeah, I think we covered most of our bases here. If you haven't joined Discord yet, make sure to get in there. We've been having a lot of fun. Chat's blowing up. The new year, people are talking. So if you haven't yet, make sure to join the Discord. Check out the link in the description. If you haven't, you can get access through that. If you're new to Clubs Poker and haven't signed up for that, make sure to do so using our affiliate code to get into our home games that helps support the podcast. And I guess without further ado, Wes, let's get started.
Yeah, one more note on Clubs Poker. If you have not signed up yet, there's a good chance that if you do, you'll get a free tournament ticket. And we've actually been doing some giveaways even to our existing players. So if you haven't yet, just sign up. Even if you're not going to play a ton, maybe get in the home game and get a free tournament ticket.
I mean, we've given away 15 tickets in the past week or something?
Yeah. So, and there's probably going to be more coming. We're not 100% in control of how many that is, but
I'm glad. Yeah. Honestly, lots of giveaways.
The more they get used, the more they'll probably keep coming, is what I'd say.
Yeah, so, I mean, honestly, we've been doing a ton of sweet giveaways. We've been giving away cash. We've been giving away Clubs Poker tickets. Let's just keep that rolling through 2025. So if you're a listener here, make sure to tune in for when we do these giveaways. They're, not too hard to win. So
that's true. That's true. All right. So yeah, let's get into it here. And once again, if you guys are just listening to the audio and you have the ability right now to watch on YouTube, I would highly recommend doing that.
You can find the link for the video in the description of this audio. If you're listening to this, say through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or through our website, you can find the link to the YouTube version in the description. Make sure to go in there, click. Also, if you have an extra second, subscribe to the channel. That helps, get our channel to the top of the search list. So.
Yeah, totally. All right. So we discussed these hands. They happened in the WPT Prime. So we discussed these hands a couple episodes ago. So we're not necessarily going to talk about the strategy that much between the two of us, but we're going to walk through these hands and see kind of what the solver preferences would be in these different spots and see how I did, but also see, what I could have done differently if I thought a player was, had a certain type of leak. And so we are going to start with a hand that I played against Chris Mormon. He's small blind, I'm big blind. I had about 60 blinds, but he had between 25 and 30.
Is this in the WPT Prime?
Yep.
Okay. And if you guys aren't familiar with Chris Mormon, one of the greatest in the world, one of the top online players, one of the top live players. He went back-to-back final tables in the WPT World Championship, by the way, for 7-figure scores back-to-back years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Me too. Go ahead. I think he made
So,
7 figures both times, but anyways.
yeah. So now the way this ended up playing out, it folded to him in the small blind, and he had, 30 bigs or just below that. Now he raised the blinds were 1K, 2K with a 2K ante. He raised to 5K, which is 2.5 big blinds. So we'll see here for starters that the solver wants him to actually raise much larger, 3.5 big blinds. Although if we were at 25 big blinds, it would say 3 big blinds. And that's just this is just it telling you what the optimal sizing is. There are versions of this tool or other solvers where you can be more specific about the raise sizes, but this is not the absolute premium subscription, and I think most people won't want to pay for that. And so we're kind of taking a look at this from the viewpoint of the more middle of the road GTO Wizard
I like it.
subscription.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, yeah. I feel like this is going to, fit into most people's version. So,
Yep, totally. So we see he made a bit of a mistake. However, I think it's not that big of one, and he may have some reasons for doing it.
what size did he go to? I was kind of messing with some settings as you were mentioning that.
Yeah, he went 2.5x, and it says he should go 3.5.
And he's from the small blind with 30 bigs ish.
Yeah, and so if you guys are wondering, the main reason you want to go bigger here is just because you're out of position.
Yeah.
When you're out of position, you benefit a lot more from just taking the pot down now. And I'm going to be more willing to call because I'm in position. So he needs to give me an incentive to not do that, essentially.
Got it. Cool.
So in this hand, we never find out what he had. As many of you will know if you heard our last episode, but so I'm in the big blind here with Jack 5 of clubs. And as we can see here, almost all these suited hands are just going to call. And I don't think the fact that he raised smaller is going to change that.
Let's just kind of clarify for those who are really new to GTO Wizard. If you look on the right side here, there's 4 different colors. There's like a maroon, a red, a green, and a blue. Maroon is all in, red is raising, green is calling, and blue is folding. Now, on the left side here, you'll see all the different possible hands available. And then color coded on what we should do with each one of them. So you'll see in the bottom kind of the shit triangle, as we've mentioned before. Those are all going to be folds. A couple of the small pairs look to be just pure jams, with the middling pairs, calling, and then the upper echelon of pairs doing a mixture of just raising and calling. Probably is trapping, I'm assuming. But anyways, the point is to just kind of take a look and see that you get to see all the different hands and what is optimal with all of them based on what the coloring shows.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And then you'll see some of them where there's a little bit of both. There's some red, some green, or some maroon and some red. And that just means that both plays are going to give you the same amount of expected value. And so if you look at these hands, so like pocket tens, it basically wants you to raise around half the time, and it wants you to call around half the time.
Right.
This is the sort of hand, if you're going to either deviate or make an exploit, like this is where you start, because you have 2 options to choose between that are equal anyway. So you definitely want to make this decision based on something other than just, you know, a solver. You can, some people choose to just randomize and try and, you know, end up with the appropriate probability of doing each action. But
Yep.
I think the better way to think about this is to say, okay, if I 3-bet here, do I think this opponent's just going to call with any two? Let's say, for example, I think the opponent's going to call with any two cards.
Okay.
Then I'm just always going to 3-bet this. And then I'll also probably 3-bet like these other pairs too, even though 8 says we should only call.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
would
right,
3-bet
because
that too, because we're almost always ahead.
well, and the reason, you know, this chart is assuming we're playing against someone who's playing perfect poker, when in reality,
Yep.
a lot of these people we're playing no one is playing perfect poker. So it's okay for us to deviate from what the solver says and have it still be correct, even though the solver says it may not be theoretically correct.
Yep. Yeah, and on the flip side here, if someone's going to just call with a lot of stuff, you'll notice that it sometimes wants us to bluff with 10-7 off, Queen 6 off, all these kind of offsuit weak hands. I would just never do that if I knew someone's going to call, because the reason you're raising these hoping to get a fold, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so if someone's just a calling station, I'm never going to try and bluff them. It's kind of just a pretty good concept for wherever you are in the hand.
Yeah,
right?
and again, if you're looking at the video version of this, you'll notice. I mean, a lot of these bluffish ones are telling you to do it very very slimly, or very not frequently. Infrequently. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yeah. So
maybe I did have too much to drink last night.
No, that's all right. Everyone else did too.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it was New Year's.
Yeah, and so then there's some hands where you want to go all in and just either take the pot down or, you know, realize your equity. And so I had Jack 5 of clubs, and so the solver says we should call. I don't think against someone like Chris Moorman, there's a reason to deviate from that. I think suited hands are just going to be easier to play post flop. We're in position. I think this is a pretty standard decision on my part. The flop came 8-7-6 rainbow with one club. And
unearthing unexploitable.
It says all these random things.
Little memes. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if we look at what the pot size was, he raised a 5 and I called 5K, so 2.5 bigs. So the pot is 12K, which is 6 bigs. Here it says, because of the raise size that it gives the small blind, it says the pot is 8 big blinds. But so this is the tricky part here. He actually c-bet 4,500 into 12K, which is like a bit over third pot, but it's also just a bit over 2 big blinds. So we kind of have to choose between these two sizings, what we think is closer. And, you know, this is where I think, for the sake of the way this hand played out, I'm actually going to make one subtle little change here and see what it says. So I changed it to have starting stacks of 25 bigs, and we're not going to get all in this hand, so this isn't really going to matter. Just because the solver, now it says like 45% as an option, and I think this is about as close as we're going to get to the sizing he chose.
Okay.
And so you'll see here, there's a lot of mixed stuff here, and there are going to be some boards where it just says you should bet every hand, you should c-bet everything. This board isn't one of them, because I am going to have, honestly, I will have the nut advantage. And what I mean by that is, I am always going to play, if I have a hand that makes the nuts, or essentially the nuts on this board, like 10-9, 9-5 suited, 5-4, pocket pair, maybe I would have jammed sixes.
Flop is 6-7-8 as a reminder, rainbow.
Yep, 6-7-8 rainbow. So we, as the big blind, we are pretty much always going to play those hands, like the 10-9, the hands that make straight sets and top two, we're going to play them this way up to this point, which means we're just going to call the pre-flop raise.
Yep.
He may have limped a lot of the stuff, right? He's not necessarily opening 10-9 off. He's definitely not folding, but he may have just limped, right? Completed from the small blind.
Agreed. Yep.
But he's also going to have a bit of range advantage. Like he's going to have all the overpairs, whereas I will have 3-bet those a lot of the time. So he still will have a lot of the strong hands, but I actually am more likely to have the strongest hands than he is.
Okay.
So he, I don't know what hand he had, so we won't go too far into that, but we'll just say that he bet this 45%. And so now what I'm looking at is the big blind strategy. And so 8-7-6 rainbow with one club. I have Jack 5 of clubs. If we look at what GTO Wizard says here, it pretty much just says I should call.
Okay. Pure call. Yep.
Now we can look at some other hands, like it wants to raise 8-5 suited, 7-5 suited, 6-5 suited, which is actually, see, this is something that's surprising to me. And I imagine it would be surprising to people too, because it's like a pair with the bottom end of the open ender. It feels like the right spot to call it. It feels like you don't want to try and get it all in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you think this would change if it was multi-way? Probably significantly, right?
It would change significantly, yeah. And unfortunately, there is some tool out there where you can look at some multi-way spots, but on here we aren't able to look at multi-way.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think multi-way, it would be, I guess it would just depend on how the hand played out, but
Continue.
Overall multi-way, you're going to want to just be less willing to get all the chips in, because it's more like, with more hands in there, it's more likely you're up against a strong one.
And
So,
for those who are going to be utilizing this information and learning or start using solvers, look at the top right of the screen here. You'll see where you can set the flop, where you can set the action of what was bet in terms of big blinds. Yeah, Wes is kind of hovering over it here. What the small blind does and what the big blind does. And then when you click on these actions, the solver will update and show you what you should do with all the different hands. So,
yes. Yeah, good point there. And then another point. So let's look at Jack 5 suited. If you look in the lower right-hand corner here, it has all the raise sizes, and then call and fold, and then you'll see a number next to it. So next to call, it says 0.68. That means that I am profiting 0.68 big blinds on average by calling. Obviously, folding, it's just 0. It doesn't account for the chips you've already put in. So if you fold, it's just 0, right? So obviously, if we look at the raises, if we look at the raise sizes all above, they all have a negative number next to them.
Meaning it's not a smart play.
At least I should say the spades ones have a negative next to them, which means they would be losing money.
Yeah. Oh, but the other ones aren't, because they have backdoor flush draws.
They do, but they still are lower than call, right? So when we look at calling for any of the Jack 5, so I had Jack 5 of clubs, so we'll look at that specifically.
One more, can I pause you for one more second again for the video watchers? If you're looking in the bottom right-hand corner here, we're looking at Wes's specific hand, Jack 5 suited. There's 4 boxes in the right corner, and they will show like what you should do with what, depending on what your suits are. So like Jack 5 of diamonds, Jack 5 of spades, Jack 5 of hearts. You kind of mentioned that, but I just wanted to make it a little bit more clear.
Yeah, and I was giving the numbers based on spades, actually, so it's a good clarification. So I had Jack 5 of clubs, which means if I were to raise here, it would actually be a profitable play. However, calling is more profitable, so my default here, I know we've talked about your default play a few times on the podcast. My default play is going to be to just always call this. And unless I think my opponent has, the only way I would raise here is if I think my opponent just is betting any 2 on this flop and he's going to do a lot of folding, right? Because my Jack high is not going to be ahead. So I'm just assuming I would have to make the assumption that my opponent has so many bet folds here, which there's no reason to think that in this situation. So calling is the play. Obviously, I didn't see this chart up here while I was playing, but I did make the call.
Okay.
And so now I'll click call here for the big blind, and the turn was the offsuit king. So it was full rainbow now. So now suits aren't really going to matter. And small blind, as you can see here, he's supposed to bet a lot of his hands. But he does check.
What is the black here?
Okay, so yeah, if you look at the whole chart here, the black is just hands that should not be in the range anymore. That according to the solver would have never taken this line.
They wouldn't have gotten to this point. I see. Okay.
And you'll notice some hands are like if we look at Jack 6 offsuit, if you're looking at the video, some of them have a little green and with a lot of black. And that just means that most of the time they would have taken a different line and not arrived here. So they sort of are unweighted, it's weighted against them. There's less weight to those hands. There's less of a probability that they're going to end up in this spot.
Okay.
So he chose to check, and I remember when we talked about this hand, we were thinking there's a decent argument for checking or betting. My thought process, which we won't go as deep into, but I'm like, I think if he had a pair, he's not going to just check this to fold.
If you want to hear our deeper insights on this hand, make sure to check out our last episode, WPT Prime episode.
Yes, do that. And even though my jack high is just not going to be ahead here, I sort of thought that in order to tell the story of bluffing, that it would actually be beneficial to just check and then wait for a scare card to come off on the river. Or, I have 8 outs to a straight. If I hit a pair, I'm not going to bluff. And yeah, if he has and also if he has ace high, I don't think he would have bet the flop.
Gotcha. Hey, Wes, do me a favor. Continue on. I'll be right back.
Perfect. All right. So from the big blind here, we have a few options. And if we look at Jack 5 suited, it's actually in the category of being a mix right here. So it wants us to either bet around a third pot or to check. And they have about equal expected value. Although for some of the combos, it looks like checking is very slightly better, which is interesting. And it's kind of hard to get into the reasoning for that. Something about the combinations of hands, based on the suits on the flop, whatever. Long story short is if you have Jack 5 suited here, you can either check or bet pretty small, and it's going to be of pretty equal value unless your opponent has some tendencies that you want to exploit. Last thing of note here is if you want to go all in or bet big, those are actually going to be a lot less profitable. So you can see in the lower right, the bigger bet sizes have an expected value of more like 3.7 big blinds, whereas checking and betting 1/3, it's more like 4.5 or 4.6 big blinds. So that is a pretty significant difference here. And we decided to check it back. So the river came the 10 of clubs, which is kind of the perfect scare card that I had alluded to before. So the board is now 6, 7, 8, king, full rainbow, and then 10 river. So our opponent decides to check again, and now we can, our 10 or our jack high is going to never ever be good. Plus, it brings in a 4 to a straight, and I think it's a very credible story that we could have something like maybe ace 9 or 7-9, 8-9, 6-9, maybe queen nine, or, you know, 10-8 or something, 10-7. We could bet two pair pretty
Remind
comfortably
me,
here.
Wes, now that I'm back. The river was a 10, you said, right?
Yep.
Oh, I remember talking about this hand now. I mean, there's a lot of hands you're not going to want to bluff on the river, but this is probably one of them. And I'm assuming GTO Wizard's going to agree with you here.
Yeah. So if we look now, this is the one interesting thing. So the pot, according to GTO Wizard, is 13.3 bigs. In reality, it was more like 10 10 and a half bigs, but we can just look at the percentage sizing here and get a pretty good idea. So he checks, and we should actually be going all in or betting 90% of the pot, according
Okay.
to GTO Wizard.
Okay.
Now, what I did was a little different. I bet 15.5K into 21K. So I bet about 3/4, which, if you look in the upper right here, GTO Wizard is giving us sizings of 64%, 90%, all in, as well as a couple smaller sizes, which it just never wants to do here. But the good thing here is Jack 5 suited, it says 100% you have to bet this. Obviously, you're going to bet any straight, and you're going to pretty much bet any hand that has gotten here without making anything. So Queen 5 suited, Jack 5 suited, Ace 5 suited, Ace 5 offsuit, Queen 5 offsuit. All these hands are just nothing right now, and you have to turn them into a bluff. If you look at and it also actually 6-3 suited, 6 deuce suited, 6-4 suited. It actually wants us to bluff those because even bottom pair now has so little showdown value.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and
Um,
that's kind of the reason why it's telling us that we got to bet is because we have no showdown value. It's the only way we're going to win.
yeah, and it would be easy to fool yourself into thinking, oh, I have a pair, you know, but it's probably likely that if he had something like a bluff, you know, or even like ace deuce, like he's gonna bluff that type of hand now. And so when he checks, maybe he's just giving up, but I think there's a good chance he has one pair. And if he has two pair, I'm not necessarily thinking I'll get that to fold, but I think I can get him to fold one pair. And obviously, if he does have ace high or queen high, I still need to get that to fold too.
Okay.
You'll notice it wants us to bet 6-7 offsuit, which is bottom two pair. So it actually does want us to value bet, you know, fairly thin here with 4 to a straight on the board. You know, we're hoping to get called by top pair if we have bottom two pair, right? So, anyways, now here's the strategy part of it. I think it's less in a practical sense, it's going to be less important that you get the exact sizing right. What's going to be important in gameplay is that make sure that you are taking the same bet size with your bluff as you are with your value hands. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you could have a couple different sizes you use, but like make sure you're not doing something where you're changing the size of your bet because of value versus bluff. Make sure that it's something different. Like if you bet big, it's going to be polar. And if you bet kind of medium sized, you're going to include more value hands.
And you know, and good players you're playing against will recognize this. So
Yeah, you just make sure the main thing is to make sure to not give your opponents a pattern that they can easily pick up on.
yep, exactly. Yep.
Um,
Hence why we balance, they say.
yes. And so the reason I bet about 3/4 pot is because I thought if I had a straight here, that is the size I would use. And
Yeah, you want to get value for it.
yeah, so he did fold pretty quickly. But we'll just take a look. If I were to bet this 8.5, which is 64%, he actually is supposed to, you know, call with some one pair stuff and fold some one pair stuff. Like,
I love this is one of my favorite parts of the solver is being able to see what, you know, like what they could be calling with.
yeah.
It's pretty
And
cool.
this is another great way to think if you can exploit your opponents. Cause like, I think So when we bet this 8.5 into the 13 big blinds, the small blind is actually supposed to call with like Jack 10 and occasionally with 8-4 suited or Queen 7 offsuit. And
So like second, third, and fourth pairs.
yeah, and it's like barely breaking even, and it's also you're also supposed to fold Jack 8 and Queen 8 mostly, so it's like kind of a mixture of things, and it has to do with different blockers and whatever. I'm not concerned with memorizing this sort of thing because it would just drive you crazy, and most people don't have time. Even I don't have time for it, and I'm a
Well, let me
professional.
ask you then, Wes. What kind of information do you retain after studying a hand and running it through like we just did from beginning to end? What information are you holding on to? What information are you looking at the most to try and improve your game?
Yeah, so let's just start with the river here. The biggest thing is if we look at the stuff that small blind is supposed to call and fold with, I think with 4 to a straight here, I think our average opponent is going to fold more than this. I think they're going to fold all this one pair stuff, which means that I think that this, you know, medium-ish size as a bluff is actually a lot more valuable than the solver is getting credit
Let me
for.
pause you again then. So, what I think one valuable thing you take away is that a lot of people might overlook if they're new to solvers is to not take it at face value, but to relate it
Use it
to
as
the
a
opponent types that you're playing against.
yeah, use it as a tool, a stepping stone to get to the solution you want, right?
Yep. Okay.
Um, and if we go back, earlier in the hand, I think, um, I guess I think the river is probably the biggest takeaway in the sense, but I think on the turn, one thing that we didn't really look at, but I would dive into more is like, okay, so the solver agrees that my Jack 5 suited is supposed to bet or check, and it's kind of indifferent between the two. I would dive into, and we can just quickly click on it for the video. So first off, like what would be the best sizing for me? That's one thing I take away. But also, if I were to bet, what hands is he supposed to continue with here? And the reason I didn't bluff it is because I thought, kind of as I alluded to, I thought he would probably call with any of his one pair hands, which is pretty much what the solver is saying. Um, it wants him to fold his ace queen, ace jack, and his other, Jack 10, Queen 10. But the one thing is, I actually feel like he would have checked ace high. And this isn't saying my specific opponent, Chris Mormon, is like super exploitable. This is more me in the moment thinking like, I think his ace highs would have checked on this 8-7-6 flop. So I actually feel like I have less hands that I can fold out with a bluff here than the solver might suggest.
Okay.
So
Okay. So we're kind of removing those ace, queen, and ace jack suited because I mean, Chris Morman's supposed to be a good, I mean, he is a good player. He's a great player. He's one of the best players. So we assume that he's studied enough to know that those type of hands typically, not saying he doesn't do it, but
yeah,
shouldn't be c betting on these boards where this range is smashing you more than him.
yeah. And well, it does look like, to be fair, like it definitely seems like these hands should c bet some of the time. Like if we go back here, like he should sometimes c bet those and mostly check. But
Yeah.
in my mind, in the moment, I'm thinking like those hands probably are going to check. Now that might be me being wrong in the moment too. By the way, I'm not saying like
Yeah.
I'm just kind of giving an insight to how I would think about it. So,
Okay. I like it.
yeah. Anyway, so that was hand number one, and we'll dive into. And hey, we might as well highlight the fact that besides the sizing on the river, I think I played this hand perfectly.
Well
And
done.
I
Yeah.
got the fold on the river.
You got
So,
the bluff through. There you go.
yep.
See,
Um,
for me, but the hand would have went a little more like this. Like, okay, I got an open ender on the flop. I call.
all in.
He checked. He checked the turn, right?
Yep.
Okay, he checks the turn. I don't have any showdown value. Time to bluff. All right, bet, but bet a little bit bigger because I want him to fold. Hold on. Here's the thoughts of a field player, guys. And then the river. He checks again, and I can't win, so bet big again. Cross my fingers. Knock on wood. No, I'm just playing, but that's a more simplified version of
Yeah.
it. For sure.
But you can kind of get to a lot of the same ideas.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot more intricacies to it than that. You know, I mean, when especially someone who is like a solid field player, they're honestly thinking a lot of what the solver is saying to do in the background of their thoughts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's still a lot of similar thought process going on.
Yeah.
I always find that we play a lot of hands pretty similarly, and it goes to show like if you
Like over limping 10-4 off under the gun one, and then making
we
10K
don't
off
talk
it.
about that. Hey, that might be your most profitable hand of all time, like online at least.
Definitely online, for sure online.
Yeah. So, all right, so let's dive into this second hand here. This is a little bit later in the tournament. The blinds are, um, what are the blinds right now? 2K, 4K with a 4K big blind ante. And we have a pretty big stack, so we have like 2-7. It won't really matter. The opponent in the big blind that we're going to be up against has around 140K, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, I guess it was more like 150. So we're
So they have
going
like
to
30 some bigs.
yeah, 37. So we're going to give him 40 big blinds here.
Okay.
And now I looked down, I had Ace of Diamonds King, and I min raised to 8K in the hijack. Now
Who
at
the heck
40
says
blinds,
that? Ace of Diamonds King? You didn't even say that.
I
What's
don't know
the
what king it was. It was a black king.
Ace? I've never heard you say that. Ace of Diamonds King.
It does sound kind of funny. Um, the diamond part is what's going to matter
Obviously,
here.
that's the one that matters. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
and
talk shit, and I'm probably a little too hungover and sore, and just not thinking
that's
straight, and it's just not. You know, you sometimes you just miss Wes.
I don't think it was a total miss. I think it was like I mean you set such a high bar, Max, that
Oh,
I
I
got to hold you
appreciate
to
you.
a high
Okay, okay,
standard.
back to the action.
All right. So one thing we'll notice here is it gives us a 2.3x open size, which means, I should have opened to maybe 9K. There weren't 100 chips. So I couldn't have done like
It's a little
9,200.
different live, right? Because you can't really customize your bets as much as you
You
can
can't
online.
hit it exactly. The one thing here is though, is this is assuming everybody has 40 big blinds. I have like at this point I have 70 or 80 big blinds, but
Yep.
there are other players behind me that have less, like a 20 big blind stack. So when I open to a specific sizing, I'm sort of just like standardizing it based on the average stack depth of everyone left in the hand. I'm not trying to hit it perfectly, and it's not going to make too much of a difference here. But just a quick note.
Just so you don't, to not get hung up. I feel like that would be something I would potentially get hung up on, like if it's not perfect.
Yeah, good to know. I mean, it's yeah. Don't worry too much about that. So
Okay.
we get a
Can you
call from
remind
the
me the positions here?
yeah. So I open in the hijack, and then the big blind calls.
Okay, hijack and big blind. Okay.
Mhm. So the flop comes 9 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 5 of diamonds, and big blind checks. So he's, as you can see, as some of you can see here, the big blind is supposed to just check 100% of his range here. I can still have stuff like 6-7 suited, 8-9 suited, all the sets. So even though this board is kind of a low one, it doesn't necessarily favor him in the sense that I can still have a lot of these really strong hands, and I can have the over pairs and stuff.
Yep.
So now we look at the hijack strategy, and a little bit similar to last hand, where there can be some checking and some betting. Supposedly, we're supposed to check 35% of our combos here. Obviously, when I'm sitting at a live table here, I'm not trying to like pinpoint something like that, but it goes to show we're supposed to bet a decent amount. However, we look at ace king offsuit, and ace king offsuit is a hand that we're going to want to check a lot of the time,
Like
which is what I
60%,
did.
it looks like ish, maybe around
Yep.
there.
Yeah. And so this opponent, I didn't know him too well, but I could tell he was like fairly aggressive, right?
Yep.
But and that was maybe more of a perception, I should say. I knew that he Wasn't a big tournament guy, but he was
Well, that's our
we played
job
a
as
lot of
poker players,
cash.
Wes, is to kind of try. I mean, even if the information's wrong, is to make, is to judge the book by its cover until we've read the book. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we, so I decided to check. And now, if we look at the solver, you can, it's kind of actually indifferent between checking and betting, quarter pot or betting, or sorry, 1/5 or 1/3. You can kind of do all of it. But I'm not going to sit there and like randomize. I'm just going to come up with a decision that makes logical sense to me in the moment.
Okay.
So I chose to check back. And as you'll see, like we, you know,
I feel like I would heavily check back on this.
I agree. And one thing that'll come into play here is if we look at like ace 3 suited, ace 4 suited, ace, 10 suited, it still wants to mix checking and betting, even if we have a flush draw. So it's important to realize that like sometimes when we check back here, we should be able to have the nut flush draw as well. That's going to play an important part later in this hand.
Yeah, I mean, you can see here that ace three of diamonds, the nut flush draw is still checking half the time.
Yep. And even if we have spades, hearts, or clubs, we're still going to bet those a decent amount of the time.
What
To
do you
bluff
think
too.
the solver's reasoning for this is? Is to just realize equity before, because that range hits them, so we don't want to get, blown off our equity essentially by betting.
Yeah. One of the things that's important is, we've talked about balance. And I think when I check back this flop, and this maybe isn't exactly the solver's reasoning, but it's more how I think about it, is I want to check back some nut flush draws too, because as we can see, like I'm checking back ace king. I think if someone were to guess what I had when I check back this flop, ace high is going to be a big portion of that. And so if I can't have the nut flush when the turn comes a diamond, it's going to make me very capped. It's going to make it so my
Yeah.
opponents can really attack me.
Well said. And I will say that one thing I've definitely, um, learned over the past year or two, and that um, has helped me tremendously, is realizing that people can now check back hands like nutted flush draws, where oftentimes I'd be a payoff wizard when the third flush hits and I still have top pair or something like that against someone who checked back a flush draw, thinking, hey, this person would never check back the nut flush draw or even a flush draw at that. So, and then they end up I end up either value owning myself or getting owned one way or another, just because they check back the nut flush draw.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's good to keep all these things in mind. And one thing I may have actually done, it wants us to occasionally check pocket aces, but to bet all the other pocket pairs above a 9.
Okay.
I might have checked. I might have done a little bit more checking with aces and kings.
Yeah, it looks like
Which
kings, it doesn't want you to check at all.
it doesn't, but it also says it's like if you look at the lower right here with kings, it says checking will give us EV of between either 6.2 or 6.8 big blinds,
It's
depending on
still a
if we have
lot
a
and it's
diamond.
close, right?
And yeah, betting is going to be 6 point. Yeah, betting the correct size is only going to give us like 0.01 big blind more.
You're right. It's
So
interesting.
so that's one where we can look at kings, and even though it would be supposedly unbalanced to ever check back kings here, from an EV standpoint in the moment, it's not going to we're not going to lose money by doing so. So it's the sort of thing that if you're checking back hands like pocket kings and queens, you're probably checking a little bit too much. And maybe when you bet, you don't have enough of the value hands, but in a vacuum, like in one hand, you're not going to lose EV by doing it. So that's kind of complicated, but hopefully it kind of made sense too. Um, anyways, we check back, and the turn is the king of diamonds, which gives us both top pair, top kicker, and the nut flush draw.
That's a
So
pretty good turn.
it is. It is. And so the big blind checks here, and I ended up betting 11K into 22K, which is around the half pot or the 55% sizing that
11 into
we're going to.
22 is exactly 50.
Yep. Yeah, it is exactly
You're saying
50.
according to what the solver says, 55%. I get you. I'm
Yeah,
just giving
yeah,
you
they
shit.
don't give us an exact 50%, but that was better. So, one interesting thing here is if we look at what my ace king strategy should be, if we have the ace of diamonds, we can choose between betting like looks like 55 and is it 33%? 50 no, 55 and 83%. So it wants to go on the bigger side. If we don't have the ace of diamonds, it wants to lean more towards checking, but it would actually be fine to check any ace king here, which is, you know, which is interesting, but it makes a little sense because we are still, even though we can have the nut flush here, we're still pretty weighted towards ace high or one pair hands.
Yep.
And that is a pretty easy range for our opponent to either attack or to get value from if they have two pair or straight or set or
Yeah.
flush themselves.
It's almost deceiving. Your hand's almost deceivingly not as strong as you want, as it looks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the absolute value. It's like, oh, we have top pair, top kicker, and we have the nut flush draw, but it's like the actual strength of the hand is medium.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have the nut flush draw, we only have one card to come, so it's not quite as valuable. But that being said, I did choose the 50%. So my sizing according to the solver is, it's not a mistake by any means. It makes sense.
Okay.
And if we look at so another thing here is once we check back the flop, I think it would be easy to just check down with any ace high. But if we look at like ace three suited, obviously if we have diamonds, we want to bet for value. But even if we have spades, hearts, or clubs, that's the sort of hand we actually want to bluff now. And it might be easy to think that, oh, we have ace high, we have showdown value, but
Uh,
we're we're usually behind. There's a lot of better hands that can fold now. Like our opponent could just have a better ace high.
I feel like this is where one of my weaknesses lay. I'm not often turning, the ace three suiteds that are of the non-diamond variety into bluffs here. Due to being just afraid that it's just, not the right hand to do it with, I guess.
Yeah, because you just have no equity.
Yeah.
And yeah, it feels crappy to do, but you also kind of have to do it. Or like a queen jack of hearts, queen jack of clubs, like those hands are pretty much never going to be ahead. And so it's good to, even if you're just folding out hands like your opponent could have ace 10 without a diamond, that's still several combos.
Does the so let me ask you, does the solver ever just give up, or does it fight for
it,
every pot?
it does give up sometimes.
Okay,
It will give up.
that's a question I guess I've never really asked, but it's probably a good question to ask.
Mm-hmm. That is a good question. Yeah. Just because you have what you feel to be no showdown value, it doesn't always mean you should bluff, but it is a good sign that bluffing.
It's a good time to bluff.
It's one of the main factors that goes into bluffing. If you are pretty sure, or I should say, almost certain that your hand's behind.
Crucial word. He says it's one of the key factors.
Yep.
There's other things you need to take in consideration. So don't just bluff specifically for that reason. We need to figure out what our opponent's range is as well. So
yeah, and if we go back to what the big blind's doing here, we'll see that like he will often be betting his flushes supposedly. Two pair and stuff. Like there's some value hands. 6-7, which is a straight on this board, is either probably gonna check or bet big. Queen 10, Queen Jack, Jack 10, a lot of that stuff is going to mostly bluff. But there's some mixed strategy, and so I don't necessarily know what this opponent is going to be doing. So let's say we bet 55%. We bet 50% in the actual hand, but I'm going to say that we bet 55% for the solver purposes. And our opponent, so he check raised. I bet 11K. He met 30K. So he went a little under 3x. It's kind of a small raise. So I'm going to just go with the 10.4 big blinds for this purpose, just because that's the sizing that the solver would want to use for check raising most of the time. He didn't exactly do that, but that's okay. And if we look at the hands he's going to be raising, the solver said it's like sets, it's two pair, it's straights, and it's flushes, and it's some bluffs. And a bluff could be like ace four offsuit with the ace of diamonds. Obviously, the ace of diamonds is kind of a big bluff card, or like a, ace seven, ace five type thing. It could, the diamond could be like, if it's ace seven, it could be with a seven of diamonds. Basically, if you're gonna bluff in his seat here, you want to have a diamond. You want to make it a little less likely that I have a flush, and it also gives you a little bit of extra equity. Not against my actual hand, obviously, because I have the nut flush draw, but just as a general, if I have ace king offsuit and I decided to bet call, him having ace seven offsuit with the seven of diamonds gives him a lot more equity.
Yeah.
So he decides to raise, and pretty clearly my hand is going to be a call here. Even if I have ace king without a diamond, we want to call. However, I have a lot. If you look at the lower right here, the expected value that we have is a lot higher if we have the ace of diamonds in our hand.
Which we do.
We do. This is a great example of why it's important for us to have the occasional nut flush in our range, because sometimes we'll get action like this. And if we're able to show up with the nut flush here, it will discourage our opponent, or it'll make it tougher for our opponent to just bluff us off the hands that actually would fold. So I think pretty straightforward here. We decide to call, and the river is, I believe, four clubs. It was a offsuit four. And our opponent decides to go all in. Now, we obviously we're not beating value with the one pair here, and this is a tricky decision. And so if we want to look at my actual hand, we can see.
So what Wes is saying real quick is that he's in relation to what we were talking about earlier, having the ace of diamonds and king. You think the hand is looks deceivingly strong, but it's really not. And now with the action, that kind of proves that, right? We have specifically only a bluff catcher, king. Ace king. No one's doing this with essentially with king queen. So
Yep, yeah, and I think when you have a tough river decision, you're facing a big bet and you don't know what to do. The first thing to think about is, can I beat a value bet here? And I think this is a very clear no.
Yep, agreed.
As we alluded to, our opponent on the turn is only check raising bluffs or hands that are two pair or better.
Yep.
And we have one pair, so we can't beat any value. The solver, it says calling is like break even, and folding is obviously, calling is like the same as folding in terms of expected value. So it is really just we want to mix this in theory.
Okay.
Now, the other thing to think about is our opponent, are they going to find all the value bets and all the bluffs here? Because if they are under bluffing, we absolutely need to fold, even if they're under bluffing by a little bit. However, if they are under value betting, like if they're not going thin enough for value, then and that they do that more so than under bluff, let's say, then we want to call, because we don't think, if we think in order to value bet this, they're only going to have like the queen or jack high flush, then we kind of have to call, because it's like, or if we think their only value bets are like the queen high, jack high, or ace high flush, then we have to call, because it's like, well, they can't have the ace high flush, and they also won't do this with two pair, set, or straight. If we assume they can be bluffing a decent amount still, then we would have to call, And so I don't really know where this opponent would fall on that sort of spectrum. This is where it's important to look at the big blind all-in strategy here.
Yes, that's where I was about to ask you. It's like, I want to see the hands that he should be doing what with here. Or he or
Yep.
she, I should say.
Yeah, he. So it was all these, all these flushes, queen four suited, 10-3 suited, etc. That I think is pretty straightforward. And then 6-7, actually, surprisingly, 6-7 should mix between all in and check. I would think you would just go all in, but I
Yeah.
suppose from his standpoint, there's also some incentive to induce a bluff from like my ace of diamonds
Yep.
with nothing. But
Yep.
I think you
But
would just
yeah.
go all in. Um, Now, if we look at some bluff type stuff, there's Jack 10 offsuit with a diamond. Do we think he's going to be check raising those on the turn and bombing the river with them?
Probably not.
Yeah, maybe
I
not.
mean, there's a world, there's a
Yeah.
universe for sure.
Yeah,
That's probably it's a long shot, but it's possible.
it is. Yeah. And so, yeah, we kind of have to evaluate the likelihood because basically the bluffs are all these like hands with one diamond and either a gut shot or, maybe ace high with like the ace of diamonds type thing. Queen seven off, jack seven off, um, queen. No, that's just a flush. But yeah, a lot of the same stuff. Interestingly, 10-8 offsuit with the 10 of diamonds is kind of in the same boat where I think he would not turn middle pair into a bluff on the turn. But these are all assumptions. Basically, we're in a pure bluff catching spot. And if I'm going to come to one decision or the other, so I don't know a lot about this player at the time. I think he actually is capable of bluffing, but also I think in this tournament setting in general, the population is going to under bluff this sort of situation.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I completely agree.
yeah. And so that's how I came up with folding this hand. So
Well,
yeah, we
I
can
think
see
you
like
probably made a good fold. Unfortunately, we'll never know, but maybe that's a benefit, you know?
it's it's good to never to try and not to care about knowing the result because it's like that's just not a useful thing to think about really.
And it'll just, yeah, you'll waste energy worrying about it oftentimes. And um I one more thing I kind of want to mention is that there's a saying, and it's like if you're not, what is it? It's if you're not getting bluffed, what is the saying? How does it go? It's like if
Yeah,
you're not getting bluffed, you're
you're
overcalling or
calling too
something.
much.
Yeah,
Yep.
you're calling too much. So allow yourself to be bluffed sometimes. It's okay as long as there's logic behind why you're folding or getting bluffed. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
he might have, he might have a bluff, but in the end you're making more money by not overcalling here. So
Mm-hmm. 100%. So yeah, that's just a little insight to how I'll look through these sorts of hands. And hey, we if we look at this again, I didn't make a mistake, which is nice. I actually don't think um I don't think I necessarily felt that way about this hand in the moment because I was like, he may have gotten me there, but also, it sort of is what it is.
right,
Like,
that's the mindset you have to have, and I appreciate you taking the time, Wes, to kind of explain how you work with a solver. And I think that anyone who's listening or watching will definitely and is interested in using solvers and improving their game and their foundation of poker. Um, Definitely, try it, practice with this, dabble with it. The hardest step out of all the steps of learning something new is taking the first step. So just download the software. I think there's a free version, right?
there's a free version, there's cheaper versions, there's more expensive versions.
Yeah, just hop in
There's
there,
also, yeah,
dabble with it.
there's also other tools. I mean, we don't have some sort of sponsorship from GTO
Yeah,
Wizard
this is
or
completely,
anything.
yeah.
So
So
we
there's
got,
many different ones, and if you have, if you say you hop in and you're dabbling and messing around and you get stuck or have a question or anything like that, just hop in Discord.
yep.
You'll easily find all the help you need right in there. We can definitely help out. Just post a message in one of the corresponding channels, and yeah, we'd be glad to help you get unstuck. Right, so.
Yeah.
Not financially. We're going to try and
We're going to
get you
try and
stuck
take all your
financially.
money,
Yeah.
but
um,
um
but
yeah,
thank you.
or if you're curious about what other study tools that Max and I both find valuable, we're happy to answer that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe even Wes, one other idea I just kind of popped in my head would be cool to get into Discord and stream a live study session where we take listeners' hands and then just throw it into the tools, and then they can just watch in real time and ask questions in real time while we're going through the solver. I think that would be something cool we could do.
Mhm.
So so we'll consider that. Wes, is there anything else we have going on now that we're in 2025? What does the next couple of weeks live and online look for you?
Yeah, so live we have a tournament at Canterbury. So this episode is coming out on Thursday the 2nd. So that night will be day 1A of that tournament. I'll be there. And I'm guessing you'll be there. I don't know if you'll be there Thursday, but you'll be there at some point.
I'll be there Thursday. Yeah. So today is I got a super busy day, so um, I will not be playing today. You said there is a flight tonight, right, on Wednesday?
I think it's just Thursday.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'll
Yeah.
be playing the first
Regardless,
flight.
yeah, Thursday will be the first one I play. And hopefully the only one.
Yeah,
But
me too. Me too. Because Friday is my 38th birthday, so hopefully I don't
oh,
have
that's
to.
right.
Yeah. But I'm an old man. I don't do anything for my birthday, unlike Wes, who goes and has the time of his life with all of his friends. You have a lot of
Yeah.
friends, by the way. I went to his birthday party, and there was a lot of people.
Yeah.
For how
Thank
dumb
you.
you are, it's just crazy. I didn't expect it. So, um, yeah, no,
Uh,
and it's gonna
yeah,
be
you
free,
couldn't even stay out that late that night. You are
dude.
pretty
I like an hour and a
you were
half, and I
just
was just dust.
dusted.
I had to go home and drink, my nightly cup of coffee and lay on my like
Lay on your
back there
tummy.
my back therapy mattress. Just playing. But yeah, I'll be playing Thursday. It's a $400 for those who aren't familiar with Canterbury. It's a Minnesota local card room. It's one of our favorite places in the whole world to play cards.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we're gonna be in there. These tournaments get huge turnouts. So looking forward. What do you think the over under is gonna be? 40K.
For first place.
Yeah, I'm putting the
Yeah.
line at 40K over under. Uh,
I am
let's say
going
35. 35.
Ooh, okay. I was gonna say under, but now I want to say over probably.
It's gonna be right around
35
there.
is a good line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, not $400, you really can't complain. There's going to be a bunch of flights. Structure's decent. I think it's 30-minute level, something like that. So, looking forward to playing that. And then, I mean, there's, MSBTs and all the good stuff that we are very much looking forward to grinding in 2025 coming up. We'll get more into those in future episodes. But, Wes, let's just kill it this year.
Yeah, let's kill it.
And to all the listeners, I hope you guys kill it too. Just
Yeah,
not
just
against
not
me.
us though.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't kill
Um,
us.
yeah. Am I missing anything here, Wes?
Um, the last thing is, do we have any sort of? We're not gonna do like a big New Year's resolutions episode, but anything that you have in terms of poker or anything else that you want to share?
I'm kind of sticking on the same line. So if you guys hadn't listened to or haven't listened to our last year's New Year's resolution episode, honestly, like my resolutions are going to remain the same. Make a pile of money. I'm not going to set the expectation of how many dollars I'm going to win, but a
But
lot of
at
people,
least seven figures.
but at least seven figures. Yeah. And I think a lot of players will I think a lot of players should and will hopefully probably set, study goals and things like that. I don't typically set like too many specific goals on New Year's Day because I end up failing most of them and I just don't want to let myself down. So I kind of have a broader setting. So yeah, anyways, gonna work a ton on real estate this year, gonna work a ton on poker and focus on those two things. Obviously, number one, focusing on my family and my marriage and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
in
that's
terms
good.
of business, yeah, real estate, poker. I will not be grinding as much this year as I did last year. Last year I had a lot of volume live, a lot of traveling. This
Mhm.
year I'm going to be doing a little bit less live traveling, still traveling, still playing. Wes and I would
But
probably go.
not as full of a World Series. I know you've said.
Definitely not. Yeah, I'm gonna just do a couple of 1 week trips to the Vegas this summer instead of doing the full schedule. In my earlier 20s, I probably would have enjoyed sticking it
You
out
say
for as
that
long.
like you're in your late 20s now.
Shh. um, I mean, in terms of physical condition, I'm pretty
Yeah.
close, but uh, yeah, I'm just going to just kind of go with the flow and put my best effort in, and that's kind of where I'm setting my goals at. So,
Mhm.
what about
Yeah.
you?
For me, I want to make $2 million. Just kidding.
No, you're not.
So
No, you're not.
I mean, I'm not kidding that I would like to. No,
Yep.
I I am setting a study goal where I'd like to average 3 sessions per week, and they're not going to be like huge deep dives, but I want at least 3 sessions a week on average, where I at least do a little review or watch, a couple training videos from, one of the advanced sites, something of that sort, just so I'm, not necessarily, overdoing it, but also making sure I'm just consistent in that I am, slowly improving what my A game looks like, but also just staying in the right mindset so that I'm hitting the A game.
I think, yeah, because I mean, honestly, staying in the right mindset is the hardest part to do.
Mhm.
Because there's so many variables that and where things to think about that it can be difficult to stay primed. So I think that's a good one. And another goal that I think you and I both will be working on together is to just continue growing Suited Kings,
Yeah.
growing our listener base, growing our YouTube channel, getting merch out the door. We've been working on merch for so damn long, but I mean, it truly is in the works. And I just wanted to make sure it's high quality and not just junk. So I want it to be something you guys wear and enjoy wearing. So we will
Yeah.
that will make its way out into the streets for you guys to enjoy eventually. Wes and I will continue working on that, but yeah, just growing
And
Suited Kings. And if you
yeah.
guys have suggestions, make sure to hop in the Discord, and we have a episode suggestion channel where you can go and just type in, let us know what you want to hear about or learn about or talk about, etc.
Yeah, and lastly, we will have a Patreon where and we have some screen recorded videos that we're going to do a little commentary over, where we're showing ourselves actually playing online, and we're going to discuss, just, sit down and discuss like what we think of our own plays, some strategy talk, some insight.
Yeah,
We do not have the specifics on what the subscription will look like, but it'll likely be a thing where, for access to that, we would charge a small subscription, and we would
very
suggest,
small. Yeah.
yeah, $200 a month.
If you can't
We
afford that, you're just broke. Obviously, he's kidding, but it'll be a couple
yeah,
few bucks, something like that. And I'm assuming they have like tiers and stuff like that. So we'll
we
probably
can, yeah, we can do tiers. Basically, the idea is that would be for people who want to, do a little extra work to improve their game. Um,
there'll be more like private study sessions, and I think you guys will enjoy that content. We have a ton of it just stacked and ready to go. I mean, already, edited and ready to go. We just got to get the Patreon set up and get the content in there. And then if you guys are interested, that would help support the podcast. So,
yeah. All
yeah,
right. That is all from my end. Do you got anything else you want to add?
that's it, my friend. Yeah, I guess, good luck this weekend. I will definitely see you there tomorrow. Until then, I guess I'll see you next week as well for the next episode of the Suit Kings podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the bounty isn't on my head, but maybe we don't want to start the year that way.
Yeah, no, oh, wait, okay. Okay. Well, you kind of just put that into the
Oh,
universe, Wes. All right. All right. Here we go. Giveaway time, boys and girls. If you're playing the Canterbury Park 400 this weekend, for Wes's first bullet, I know you said you're going to bag on one bullet, so I probably won't even have to pay this out, but
well, could they bust
$50.
me on day two if I bag on one bullet? Could they
Okay, yeah,
bust me on
yeah.
day
If
two?
you,
Then
yeah, you know what? So I guess we're giving away $50. Bus
I shouldn't have
West,
even mentioned this.
yeah, but yeah, look at here we go. Bus West, 50 bones in your pocket, Venmo, whatever digital cash you need. So, or cash. Just just make West pay you as he's walking out the door for extra pain. He's not
Lovely,
laughing right now.
lovely.
Lovely. But no, yeah, go ahead. We'll get one bounty. That's it, one bus. So for your first bullets. And yeah, we'll end it there, guys. We will catch you next week. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out this video on there, and let's have a great year, guys.
All right. Until next time.